Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. Ashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Bhagavati Ruttama Shloke Bhaktirvoti Naistiki. Om Agnanatimirandasya Gnananjana Salakaya. Chakshurunmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण प्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 5 Chapter 10 Verse 1. The discussion between Jada Bharat and Maharaja Rahugana. Sukadev Goswami continued, my dear king, after this king Rahugana, ruler of the states known as Sindhu and Sauvira, was going to Kapilashrama. When the king's chief palanquin carriers reached the banks of the river Ikshumati, they needed another carrier. Therefore, they began searching for someone, and by chance they came upon Jadabharata. They considered the fact that Jadabharata was very young and strong and had firm limbs. Like cows and asses, he was quite fit to carry loads. Thinking in this way, although the great soul Jadavarta was unfit for such work, they nonetheless unhesitatingly forced him to carry the palanquin. So Rahugana is going to Kapilashrama. And then they needed one more carrier, so they pulled on Jadabharat because he was very young and strong and had firm limbs. And for carrying palanquin, you need firm limbs. So they unhesitatingly forced him to carry the palanquin. The palanquin, however, was very erratically carried by Jadabharata due to his sense of non-violence. As he stepped forward, he checked before him every 3 feet to see whether he was about to step on ants. Consequently, he could not keep pace with the other carriers. Due to this, the palanquin was shaking, and King Rahugana immediately asked the carriers, why are you carrying this palanquin unevenly? Better carry it properly. Kim iti vishamam ushyate yanam iti. Sadhu atikramata. Although Jadabharat was forced to carry the palanquin, he did not give up his sympathetic feelings towards the poor ants passing on the road. A devotee of the Lord does not forget his devotional service and other favorable activities, even when he is in a most distressful condition. How many of us felt actually that Jadabharat was in a distressful condition? Did any of us feel that he was in a distressful condition? If not, why? Why didn't we feel that he was in a distressful condition?
Because dacoits were killed.
No. That is over. Now Jadabharat is being forced unhesitatingly to carry the palanquin. So when we heard this, did we feel anything? Did we feel that Jadabharat might be in a distressful situation? Anyway, we wouldn't have felt because it's not happening to us. If it was happening to us, then it was most distressful. Oh, how can I be forced to carry palanquin? I am this person, I am that person. So actually, Prabhupada is telling that, okay, it was externally a distressful situation for Jadabharat. But he did not think that way. Right, and more importantly, a devotee does not forget his devotional service and other favorable activities, even though he's put in an unfavorable situation externally. So which means that we should understand Whatever type of material situation we are in, favorable or unfavorable, it is always unfavorable. Because if it's going to take us away from Krishna, then it's unfavorable. If it is going to take us towards Krishna, then any situation is favorable. Hmm. And devotee does not forget his devotional service in any situation in life. This is the key feature of a devotee who is at least come to the stage of Nishta, fixed devotion. Jadabharat was a qualified Brahmana, highly elevated in spiritual knowledge, yet he was forced to carry the palanquin. So Prabhupada is explaining why he supposed to be in a distressful condition. He did not mind this, but while walking on the road, he could not forget his duty to avoid killing even an ant. A Vaishnava is never envious or unnecessarily violent. Meaning necessarily Vaishnava has to become violent. And this is the role of all administrators, kshatriyas, leaders. If there is necessity, one might have to be violent. Violent not necessarily physically, but even verbally. For example, leaders have to make sure that, you know, self-centered people don't take undue benefit of temple. They don't use money for personal purposes or facilities for personal purposes. Or somebody is running with their own agenda, right, for something. Now all this is not acceptable, and then leaders have to be necessarily violent. Sometimes we might have to raise our voice, sometimes we might have to say something which might be unpleasant. uh, Sometimes, devotees take things and people for granted. Mm, like, they'll say something, but they won't keep up the commitment. And it's an important commitment. Then such situations, a leader will have to be at least externally violent, if not internally, just to teach the other person. So it's not like we're going to remain non-violent or, like that all the time. That's not being responsible. There were many ants on the path, but Jadabharata took care by looking ahead 3 feet. When the ants were no longer in his way, he would place his foot on the ground. Just imagine what would be the state of that palanquin. A Vaishnava is always very kind at heart to all living entities. In his Sankhya Yoga, Kapiladev explains, Surhudas Sarvadeinam, living entities assume different bodily forms. Those who are not Vaishnavas consider only human society worthy of their sympathy. But Krishna claims to the Supreme Father of all life forms. Consequently, the Vaishnava takes care not to annihilate untimely or unnecessarily any life form. So this is about killing animals. But even otherwise, without requirement, we should not be violent towards even human beings. Sometimes, if we have people working for us, some maids, servants, etc., like that, we might just, not, uh, we might sometimes be rude with them, self-centered, etc., etc. So we should avoid all that. All living entities have to fulfill a certain duration for being engaged in a particular type of material body. They have to finish the duration allotted a particular body before being promoted or evolved to another body. Killing an animal or any other living being simply places an impediment in the way of his completing his term of imprisonment in a certain body. One should therefore not kill bodies for sense gratification, or this will implicate one in sinful activity. When the palanquin carriers heard the threatening words of Maharaja Rahugana, they became very afraid of his punishment and began to speak to him as follows. See, things sometimes, right, sama, dama, all this, pacify, chastise, divides them, devours them. So now the palanquin carriers are thinking now they are going to get punished. So they are justifying. Oh Lord, please note that we are not at all negligent in discharging our duties. We've been faithfully carrying this palanquin according to your desire. But this man who has been recently engaged to work with us cannot walk very swiftly. Therefore, we are not able to carry the palanquin with him. We normally do this, right? Protect ourselves, blame somebody else. Yeah, that's being demonstrated here. Why? Because they were Shudras. So Shudras don't have this broad-mindedness. They want to protect themselves, self-centered. Whereas Jadabharata was not only a high caste Brahmana but also a great devotee. Shudras do not sympathize with other living entities, but a Vaishnava cannot act like a Shudra. See, sympathize, compassion, and violence when required. All of them are simultaneously qualifications of Vaishnavas. Hanuman was angry. Mm, So it doesn't mean that we should not mm, we should not abstain from it when it is required. Whenever a Shudra and a Brahmana Vaishnava are combined, there will certainly be imbalance in the execution of duties. And this we see. Though we should not, Kapil Dev says we should not identify a Vaishnava with his Varna, but just for understanding the topic here, that some are heavily in Tamoguna, some are heavily in Satvaguna. Such kind of Vaishnavas, when they are combined, when they come together, there will be imbalance. Because Brahmana will want to do everything pakka, very clean, tidy, as per rules. Shudra will be complete the opposite. Vaishnava who is neophyte, who is predominantly driven by mode of ignorance, will be completely opposite to a Vaishnava who is predominantly dominated by mode of goodness. And there will be imbalance. Rudras were walking with a palanquin without at all caring for the ants on the ground. They were caring for the king, but not for the ants on the ground. But Bharata could not act like a Shudra. Therefore, difficulty arose. And this we have to see. This we have to understand. So, always there is going to be difficulty when devotees are working together. But it doesn't mean that if there is a senior, the senior devotees should have Brahminical qualities, and they should be in a position to train devotees who have this Shudra mentality. But if thinking that many devotees think like this, oh, this might be Vaishnava Parad, and then if they don't correct, then that becomes a mistake. Mm. This is true for if any devotees are dependent on us, on our guidance, and we don't guide them properly, thinking, oh, if I say this, then they'll feel bad. Then that is also a neglect of the duty. And so difficulties will arise. Conversations will have to happen, discussions have to happen, have to make people understand what they're doing wrong, why it is wrong, without pointing that it is their mistake. We should always, not make things personal. Meaning you did this. No, service should not have happened like this. It's not personal. When it is targeted at the service, people will not feel bad. People will not feel targeted. But if we say you did this, then people will feel targeted and they'll forget the actual mood was to actually improve the quality of service. That was the actual intent. They'll forget that. And then tutu meme and then disrespect and this and that and all kinds of material behavior happens. King Rahugana could understand the speeches given by the carriers who were afraid of being punished. He could also understand that simply due to the fault of one person, the palanquin was not being carried properly. Knowing this perfectly well and hearing their appeal, he became a little angry, although he was very advanced in political science. He was not advanced in devotional science or devotional service. He was very advanced in political science and was very experienced. His anger arose. He became a little angry because his anger arose due to his Kshatriya nature. Though he was very advanced in political science, because of his Kshatriya nature, anger arose. Although King Rahugana's mind was covered by the mode of passion, and he therefore spoke as follows to Jadabharat, whose Brahman effulgence was not clearly visible. Actually, King Rahugana's mind was covered by mode of passion, and he therefore spoke as follows to Jada Bharat, whose Brahman effulgence was not clearly visible. So he could not make out the exalted position in Jada Bharat, being covered like a fire covered by ashes. So he just speaks to him just like an ordinary palanquin carrier, king talking to a palanquin carrier. The distinction between Rajoguna and Satoguna is explained in this verse. Although the king was very upright and advanced in political science and governmental management, he was nonetheless in the mode of passion, and therefore, due to a slight agitation, he became angry. So, if by a slight agitation we become angry, then we can understand we are in the mode of passion. And so, we have to raise ourselves to the mode of goodness. Jadavartha, despite all kinds of injustice endured because of his deaf and dumb display, injustice endured, remained silent by the strength of his spiritual advancement. See, that's why Prabhupada's purports are all very, very, very powerful. And so, what did we understand by these two statements? Can somebody explain in English? What does it mean to us? What did we understand?
We are still in the mode of passion. We get agitated very soon when something happens.
Yeah, that I said. After that, so what is the
Even though
solution?
there's so much of injustice happening to him, he remained silent. This is what one devotee has to learn.
Okay, that's fine.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yeah.
So a devotee has to follow Tarorapi Sunicena Tarorapi Saishnava. So
no, that's fine. But I'm trying to understand what you understood from the statement. There is something. So there's one tattva in this statement, which is very important to understand, which is the last verse of the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita.
It means if you are advancing spiritually, these are the notable things when somebody is advancing spiritually.
Okay, one word you missing. Correct. So what you said is correct. There is one word in the purport which you should observe here. Anybody? Note this word strength. Strength of spiritual advancement. So this is what we have to understand. What does this mean? What do you understand from this?
I think, Proji, that only the strength in spiritual advancement can only make a person automatically, spontaneously have this behavior of,
Okay.
Able to withstand all this,
Yeah. Okay.
And still not getting disturbed, right?
Okay. So look at this. This is 3rd chapter, 43rd verse. Evam buddhe param buddhva samstabhyatmanam jai shatrum mahabhavo kamarupam durasadam. So Krishna is talking about how does one conquer lust, kama. Evam buddhe param buddhva. Knowing oneself to be transcendental to the senses, mind and intelligence. Samstabhya atmanam atmana. Steady the mind. Samstabhya atmanam. Steady the mind by atmana, meaning here Prabhupada is saying by deliberate spiritual intelligence. And in bracket he said Krishna consciousness. Now this word is not there in the purport, in the translation. And then it just says Jahi Shatrum Mahabaho Kama Rupam Durasadam. Conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. But Prabhupada explains what happens. What happens? What does one get? One gets spiritual strength. When we study mind by Krishna consciousness, we get spiritual strength. So, progress in devotional service means our spiritual strength should keep increasing. What is the spiritual strength? How does it manifest? How do we know whether we are working on material strength or spiritual strength?
Always think about Krishna.
No, in life, practical life, and we are facing situations.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Ah,
It is like how much we are able to not get entangled with the modes of nature.
okay. Okay. Can you give some examples?
Say for example,
Okay. Anybody else?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, like
Yeah.
स्वभाव में control आता है. There's
Yeah.
a difference
Yeah.
in the way of
Yeah.
behavior. You're trying at least,
Yeah.
like
We can control ourselves.
control senses.
Yeah. We become tolerant. We become tolerant of everything. Whatever is not convenient, comfortable for us, we become tolerant about that. For example, you didn't get prasadam one day, you will remain tolerant. Why? Because your body doesn't require material energy. Your body is running on spiritual energy. Right? Mind is disturbed, but you will remain tolerant. You will remain silent. Why? Because you have spiritual strength. So by this spiritual strength, we come to Brahmabhuta, liberated condition. That is a process in devotion, right? By spiritual strength. And then, yes, all of you are saying, okay, how do we get spiritual strength? By doing sincere, serious devotion, all that. But this is the symptom. Meaning, by doing that sincere, serious devotion, what will you get? You will get spiritual strength. And by spiritual, how do you know if you got spiritual strength? Your dependency on material strength will go down. You'll be able to control your mind, senses. So you will have the strength to do anukulyasya sankalpa pratikulyasya varjanam, to do favorable things favorable, to give up things not favorable. Then you know that I have spiritual strength. Because if you leave it to the body and mind, they will pull us down. But because we have spiritual strength, we are protecting ourselves from falling down. This is progress. And we have to see this strength growing in us. And it will happen in stages. Normally, it is like first bodily, then words, then mind. Meaning, first we will remain silent on the bodily platform. Meaning, bodily disturbances, we don't respond too much. Meaning, it's too hot, it's too cold, it's too this, it's too that. Food is like this, food is like that. I got food on time, I didn't get prasadam on time. Now, all this, whatever connected to the body, first becomes very easily conquered by the spiritual strength. And of course, it may be different for different people, but generally, gross to subtle. Next words, we will be able to control ourselves from speaking useless things, unnecessary things. Even though we might get provoked, maybe mind is agitated, but we won't say anything. And in the third stage, mind itself will get controlled. And it could happen otherwise also, but generally, from my own experience, I'm telling. Nonetheless, his Brahma Teja, his Brahman effulgence, was indistinctly visible, meaning it was not very clearly visible. Even though he had so much spiritual strength, it was indistinctly visible. King Rahugana told Jadabharat, how troublesome this is, my dear brother. Sarcastic. Prabhupada says sarcastic words. My dear brother, why would a king call a palanquin carrier my dear brother? Sarcastic. And he's saying, oh, how troublesome this is. You certainly appear very fatigued because you have carried this palanquin alone without assistance for a long time and for a long distance. So much of sarcasm. You appear very fatigued. Because you carried this palanquin alone, like there are nobody else, you're only carrying. Besides that, due to your old age, you become greatly troubled. Oh, by being sarcastic, you're so strong and stout and young. What is your problem? My dear friend, I see that you're not very firm, nor very strong and stout. Aren't your fellow carriers cooperating with you? So fully sarcastic. This is not a quality for a devotee. This sarcasm. If we are troubled about something, we should have the humility to directly speak to somebody without necessarily hurting them, without intentionally hurting them. Of course, people will get hurt for anything and everything, but yeah, we should try our best. But we don't have to use this, these kind of sarcastic, rude, harsh words. In this way, the king criticized Jadabharat with sarcastic words, yet despite being criticized in this way, Jadabharat had no bodily conception of the situation. So because whatever he was saying was all connected to the body, right? You certainly appear fatigued, body gets fatigued. You're carrying the palanquin alone. Old age, again body, greatly troubled, again body, mind. I see that you're not very firm, so he's only seeing the body. But he had no bodily conception. Jadabharat had no bodily conception, so despite being criticized, Jadabharat had no bodily conception, so he didn't bother. He knew that he was not the body, for he had attained his spiritual identity. So Prabhupada is explaining. So he was neither fat, lean, nor thin, nor had he anything to do with the lump of matter, the combination of the 5 gross and 3 subtle elements, which is what King Rahugana was talking about. He had nothing to do with the material body and its 2 hands and legs. In other words, he had completely realized his spiritual identity, Aham Brahmasmi. He was therefore unaffected by this criticism. Without saying anything, he continued carrying the palanquin. Just see. So if we are not agitated, that means we have made progress. We have come to Brahmabhuta. And we can realize we are so far away from it. And hence the appeal for sincere, serious devotion. Because there is no other way. There is no other way we can get there. But we have to get there. Jadabharat was completely liberated. He did not even care when the dacoits attempted to kill his body. He knew that he certainly was not the body. Even if the body were killed, he would not have cared. For he was thoroughly convinced of the proposition found in Bhagavad Gita. Na hanyate hanyamane sharire. He knew that he would not be killed even if his body were killed. Although he did not protest, the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his agent, in Kali Devi, could not tolerate the injustice of the dacoits. Therefore, he was saved by the mercy of Krishna, and the dacoits were killed. So Krishna protects his devotees. It's not required that all the time we have to engage in action only. Meaning, it's not that if we don't do some action that we won't get protected. No. If we have firm faith in Krishna, then even if we attempt some action, counter action, okay, that's also fine. Even if we don't attempt, Krishna will take care. In this case, while carrying the palanquin, he also knew that he was not the body. His body was very strong and stout in sound condition, quite competent to carry the palanquin. Due to his being freed from the bodily conception, the sarcastic words of the king did not at all affect him. Body is created according to one's karma, and material nature supplies the ingredients for the development of a certain type of body. The soul the body covers is different from the bodily construction. Therefore, anything favorable or mischievous done to the body does not affect the spirit soul. Asangho shi ayam purushaha. Purushaha. The spirit soul is always unaffected by asanga, material arrangements. So whatever is happening, favorable or unfavorable to the body, does not affect the spirit soul. We have to remember this. We have to remind ourselves. Because when we are put into distressful, unfavorable conditions, it could be as simple as somebody just criticizing us, talking something, rude, like these sarcastic words, whatever. We immediately jump or fall down to the material conception. And without even thinking whether, okay, is this affecting the soul in any way? Is this affecting me really? Without thinking, we misuse our free will, do something material, and simply entangle ourselves. So these things are all important because ultimately it is what action we are doing. In Kali Yuga, thinking is not resulting in karma phala. But action results in karma phala. And that action is triggered by our by the false ego. So we have to remember saying that, okay, I'm not this body. So nothing, soul is not affected by anything. Whatever happening is happening to the body, and I am not this body. So you don't have to respond, react. See, again, these things we might hear this 100 times. We will have the same questions in our mind. How can I just let somebody, take advantage of me? All these usual mundane material arguments. It's the same thing. It's the same tape. 1,000 times we hear this, we will have the same thing to say. But. So when but comes in our mouth, that means that we are not ready to accept. We are still on the bodily conception. Thereafter, when the king saw that his palanquin was still being shaken by the carriers, he became very angry and said, "You rascal, what are you doing? Are you dead despite the life within your body? Do you not know that I am your master? You're disregarding me and are not carrying out my order. For this disobedience, I shall now punish you just as Yamaraja punishes sinful people. I shall give you proper treatment so that you will come to your senses and do the correct thing." All that sarcasm, all that didn't work. Jadabharat didn't take it seriously at all because he was on the spiritual platform. Another thing we can understand, right? See, Jadabharat was not worried about punishment, and so he didn't end up doing something wrong just to protect his body. He knew that king will punish, but still he was doing whatever was right. He was on the spiritual platform. So now king is actually saying, okay, I'm going to punish you. You'll get the treatment. Okay, I think I'll stop here. Okay, actually, we'll do one more. So Jadabharat will start from speaking from the next verse. Thinking himself a king, King Rahugana was in the bodily conception. and was influenced by material modes of passion and ignorance. So clear analysis of Raghuna's position. He was in bodily conception and was influenced by passion and ignorance. Due to madness, which comes out of ignorance, he chastised Jadabharat with uncalled for and contradictory words. Jadabharat was the topmost devotee and the dear abode of the Supreme Person of God. A dear abode, meaning Govinda Vishram. Lord is residing in his body. Although considering himself very learned, the king was considering himself very learned because he was learned in political science. But the king did not know about the position of an advanced devotee situated in devotional service, nor did he know his characteristics. And he could not see Jadabharat's bodily effulgence, right? And he did not know what is the position of an advanced devotee. Jadabharat was the residence of the Supreme Person of Godhead. He always carried the form of the Lord within his heart. He was a dear friend of all living entities, and he did not entertain any bodily conception. He therefore smiled and spoke the following words. So he did not entertain bodily conception because he was so advanced that the Lord was residing in his heart. Advanced devotee. Distinction between a person in the bodily conception and a person beyond bodily conception is presented in this verse. In the bodily conception, King Rahugana considered himself a king and chastised Jadabharata in so many unwanted ways. Being self-realized, Jadabharata was fully situated on the transcendental platform, did not at all become angry. Instead, he smiled and began to deliver his teachings to King Rahugana. It's so interesting. You know, I mean, normally we respond, Ye yata mam prapadyante. The way people deal with us, we will deal accordingly. But that's not what we should be doing. Mostly people are in the modes of passion and ignorance. And as devotees, we should try to remain in the mode of goodness, at least. So we cannot react to people the way they deal with us. Because then we will always be in the bodily platform because everybody is in the bodily platform. A highly advanced devotee, Vaishnava devotee, is a friend to all living entities and consequently is a friend to his enemies also. In fact, he does not consider anyone to be his enemy. Suruda Sarvadehina. Sometimes a Vaishnava becomes superficially angry at a non-devotee, but this is good for the non-devotee. We have several examples of this. Narada became angry with Nalakuvara, Manigriva and chastised them by turning them into trees. Result was they were liberated by Lord Sri Krishna. The devotee is situated in the absolute platform, and when he is angry or pleased, there's no difference. Just like the Lord becoming angry or pleased, there's no difference. It is for the welfare of the jiva. Similarly, devotees becoming angry or pleased, there's no difference. But this is for a devotee who is in this very exalted platform where the Lord is residing in his heart. And how do we know that he's actually in that platform? When he himself is humiliated, insulted, etc., he doesn't react. Then we know that that devotee is in such a position. If such a devotee shows pleasure or anger, there's no difference because it will be for the ultimate benefit of the jiva. Really amazing. I mean, this was a very insightful one, right? We should not let ourselves get triggered based on how others are dealing with us. Very, very important. We should always remain on the spiritual platform, right platform, without being affected by the platform from which the other people are dealing with us. Very, very important instruction. Okay, I'll stop here if there are any questions, comments. Are there any questions? Okay, we'll stop here. ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, जगत गुरु शिल प्रभुपाद की जय, वांछा कल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिंधुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव की जय। हरे कृष्णा।
हरे कृष्णा।